everybody, Steve here for Who Took My Dice. Welcome to another video. So everything that's gone on recently with Games Workshop's new IP, Warhammer Plus, the issues with having enough of a product to actually sell without selling out. There's just a whole lot of negativity going around Games Workshop, and I kind of want to give my 2 cents on that. But mainly about the IP thing. Because that's been a big bone of contention for a lot of people, and there is a bit more to it than simple corporate greed. Now that is there. Games Workshop wants to make money, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the hobbyist side of it too, because I've been on both sides. A lot of you know that I worked for Games Workshop for for a few years, many years ago. It did give me some insight that I don't think a lot of people have. So I worked back in 2007 to 2009 and back in 2015 for a while. And it was an eye-opener to exactly what Games Workshop is really like and what they're really after. Now, obviously Games Workshop is a business, and duh, Steve, right? Well, part of that is also that's something I had to learn. When I first started working there, I thought I was doing everything right. I was trying to get people in the hobby. My first review was bad because I wasn't getting it. Games Workshop, at its core, its raison d'etre, its reason for being, is to make money. And a lot of people think, oh, they make models. They do. That's how they make the money. And so being on the other side of the desk, being in a red shirt, I learned that very quickly. They're all about making money. And that's the bottom line. That's what they do, everything they do. The other part of that, and this is an important part, Games Workshop is a publicly traded company. So it's on the stock exchange. The stock goes up, it has investors. And whether any of us like it or not, that is the bottom line of who they listen to, the investors. That's what they care about. They're happy, Games Workshop is happy. Now, there is a bonus side to it that if they make us happy, we buy more. It makes their investors happy. And you think companies would like to listen to us. And for the most part, until recently, Games Workshop had been actually listening. The FAQs were coming out. Things were getting done. They were listening to the tournaments. Obviously, the IP thing was a big knock in that put them several steps behind where they were beforehand. But yeah, that's it. Games Workshop is in the business of making money. They do it by selling models. I know it sounds pretty straightforward, but a lot of people don't seem to understand that, or maybe they don't want to. They don't want to, mix money in with their hobby. It's weird. I know. I've been that way. When I left the first time there, I was in a funk for a while. I had to put stuff away, and because it was raw. But that's the first part. Now the IP thing. Now I'm no expert in intellectual property or the legal side of it, but for the most part, a lot of places. Now correct me if I'm wrong. If there's an IP expert that sees this, please correct me if I'm wrong. But for the most part, it's you use it or you lose it sort of thing is what I understand. So we have to go back to 2013 with this one. Games Workshop got into a legal quagmire with a company called Chapter House. Now, Chapter House made third-party bits for Games Workshop. Well, I shouldn't say for them, that went along with the models. And for the most part, they got away with it because they didn't use any sort of intellectual property name. So there's no, they used alien arms, and those were some of the extra huge Tyranid arms the Games Workshop just didn't make. And Games Workshop up until this point, had a bad habit that developed for good reason, but became a very bad habit of not always making a model for every entry they had in an army book or codex, or it took them forever to get them out. And this stems from probably beforehand, but I remember distinctly in 3rd edition, where the Catacan Codex, for instance, they had the Catacan Devils, a specialized veteran infantry for them. There was a little blurb in the codex saying they were not making models for this. It was up to us as hobbyists to create our own models, that we had our own distinct excuse me, models that were all our own. And this kept going. So what happened eventually is Chapter House put up Thunderbolt Cavalry, and they called it Thunderbolt Cavalry. They were fantastic. These big wolves, metal on them, these big, what they called Space Knight legs. It looked like rather heavily armored Space Marine legs. And it went on from there. And throughout this, it was several years, this big fight they had, money went back and forth. They learned a lot about IP in that there are certain models that to be renamed. For instance, the Tyrannocyte, the big Tyranid drop pod, for lack of a better term, used to be called something else. The Doom and Malanthai disappeared. All these different things because they didn't actually build a model. It got to the point where experts, sci-fi experts, were being brought in to see who actually owned the name Space Marine, stuff like that. In the end, it led to a lot of big changes for Games Workshop, including things like we saw the great character call, I called it, the Dark Eldar losing a ton of characters because they never actually had a model, losing older models. It's a standard now of never releasing a unit that doesn't have an entry, right? So if there's an entry, a unit's coming out with that codex. You have a new army book, a unit is coming out. Yeah, and in short order too, right? So it made sure that there was always a unit for every single entry in an army book or codex, what have you. And that's how it is today now. They actually learned a very expensive and valuable lesson on actually protecting your IP. Okay, so that brings us to now with Warhammer Plus, right? Their streaming service. Of course, Games Workshop was always going to get into streaming services. They've sold a ton of their IP off into video games. We've seen a whole plethora of video games, some really good, like Space Marine, some not so good, some that are just sort of middle shelf. I've played Necromunda Hired Gun, it was okay. It was fun, but it is by no means anywhere a good game. It's okay, right? It's okay. So there's been a lot of that. Of course, they're going to get into streaming. Of course, they're getting animation. What is happening now? And we'll get to the hobbyist side of it, because right now what they're doing is unfortunately well within their rights. They're allowed to protect their IP any want. And to be honest with those people, the Astartes videos, all those other ones, who people put tons of time and energy into animating and rendering and creating, it's really cool, but it is Games Workshop's IP. Now it sounds like I'm defending what they did. Yes and no, because on one side of it, it is a business and it is their IP. They are the ones who spent millions of dollars in research and development on creating the 3-ups they used to have, on creating the molds, trying to work through all the issues with that. All the designs, the books, the artists, all that stuff there's a huge investment the Games Workshop has put into creating these things. And then to have someone come along and start getting, fame, money, influence off of building something that you built, I can see why Games Workshop want to do it. Do they do it in the right way? No, but we'll get to that later. So obviously with all this new IP stuff, they're saying that we are going to be the Warhammer animation corner. This is it. It's Games Workshop who's doing it. No one else can do it. No one else can make animations. Well, of course they are. They're in the business of making money. They're going to put all this money into investing it. They have investors that want a return on their investment into the company. So of course Games Workshop is going to say, no, you can't do it anymore. And obviously they hired that individual who did the Astartes, so they are aware of the talent out there, but they're just saying that, well, it's ours and you can't make any more of it, which sucks, but they are well within their right. It isn't a fair thing. At the same time, it is. It's unfortunately, that's the way life is. Sometimes it's fair, sometimes it's not. It is the way it is. But yeah, so that to me is the business side of it. On the hobby side, of course, see, this is actually very reminiscent for me about 5 years ago with CBS. CBS obviously owns Star Trek, and the big thing with that was a company made a a thing called Prelude to Axanar. I think it's Axanar Productions. I can't remember. Excuse me. But Axanar, they made a prelude to Axanar, which is a moment in the Star Trek lore, a big battle between the Federation and the Klingon Empire before Kirk was ever captain of the Enterprise. There's a big hero, Garth. This is big Imperial this Federation captain who ended up, saving the Federation, stopping the war. It was a beautifully well done introduction. The ships looked wonderful. Animation was great. They had some really big names from all over the sci-fi world in it. And they used this to get the Kickstarter going. And they ended up getting, I think, over $1 million. And CBS took notice of this and slapped them with a cease and desist right there. Boom. This caused, again, a huge issue with the fans. Because the fans wanted this. The fans said, this is great. You haven't done anything worthwhile in a while. We had Enterprise. I think at this point we had maybe one of the new Star Trek movies. And there was a lot of back and forth. Eventually said, okay, you can make it. But they put out these really strict set of rules that really rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way. Because there had been a time between the end of Star Trek Enterprise and the first of the new Star Trek films where there was nothing. And even during some of Star Trek films, there was nothing else. There was no shows. You're waiting 1, 2, 3 years for a new movie. There was nothing else. So the fans were filling in that empty space. And it helped keep the franchise alive when the people who actually were, had the rights to it, per se, weren't doing a very good job. And eventually it rubbed, again, a lot of people the wrong way, and it wasn't fair for the fans. Again, it's their IP, so it's in that really gray zone. And that's where Games Workshop finds itself now. By doing this, as I know, there's a ton of people who have picked up books, who have started armies because they've seen these videos. This is great free publicity for Games Workshop. They don't have to do anything, and people are still buying their stuff, which is a big deal. I mean, it would have made our jobs much easier back in 2007 when Games Workshop was nowhere near well known in North America as it is now, to have someone go, here's a movie, here's a video, right? And just boom, and people getting interested, right? Obviously, the world has changed. But from a hobbyist point of view, this is a kick in the teeth, because there are people who have put their time and energy into making absolutely stunning videos. And now they're being told, no, you can't. Well, it's that weird dichotomy of it's everyone's hobby and it's everyone's hobby. The hobby does, obviously, the hobby of wargaming belongs to the big community worldwide. Games Workshop, or Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, all that stuff belongs to Games Workshop. It's their chunk of the community, right? They say, this is ours. It's a war game. It's our war game, and you can play it. But now you can't make videos. And of course, there's a fear that this could extend if Games Workshop is putting in tutorial videos. Well, they ask people who do tutorials on their YouTube channels to stop doing that. If they're obviously, they've said they're doing battle reports, so they're going to ask channels to do battle reports to stop doing that. You can't do any more battle reports with Games Workshop products in it. Obviously, we could see a big changeover where Games Workshop just completely disappears from all these hobby channels and it's just with that one place, which I think Games Workshop would probably love. At the same time, that would be so detrimental to the community. I don't think they've fully thought this through. From my 10 cents, if I throw my 10 cents at this was I understand when they did this move. They want to protect their IP. They don't want another chapter house. It would be really, really bad for them right now. They don't want to go through more crap. They don't want to have to end up losing stuff and have to rename stuff again. So they're being very aggressive with it. Again, I think there was probably a softer handed touch they could have done. Some sort of advertisement or some sort of legal mumbo jumbo that they could have handed out saying, I am not part of Games Workshop. And a lot of channels do it, say we're not related, we're not part of Games Workshop, this is completely fan made. Obviously it's not enough anymore. I think they could have done something in that vein to stop this growing resentment. Again, like I said, with not being able to get stuff, the prices of stuff going through the roof. stuff that I don't think people really need. I've even seen videos recently about the predatory nature of how they sell stuff, and that's true, and it's really starting to grind on people a lot. And so this definitely was not something that was needed. I think it has definitely hurt the connection between Games Workshop and the community. Hopefully Games Workshop can heal it a bit. Maybe they'll relent. I don't think so. Definitely a darker day for Games Workshop, and they went through some of that with Chapter House. I remember that was wrapping up when I was working in Games Workshop, and there was a lot of negativity. It got to the point where at one point there was actually a Games Workshop Facebook page, and it actually closed, and all the stores had opened their own Facebook pages because there was just so much negativity being thrown at Games Workshop, which is understandable. And that's why we have people trying to boycott it, which is fine. I know some people said it's a bad idea, it's a good idea. Excuse me. If I can leave one piece of advice though for that is, it may not seem like it, but we really do have a lot of power as consumers, and we can vote with our wallet. If we're unhappy with the way a company is treating its community, if you're sick and tired of the high prices. I mean, I saw that new Primaris Captain Gravis armor, the toy from Bandai is like $260 Canadian. I'm not paying that for a toy. I'm sorry, it's collectible, but it's things like that. Hopefully it can rein that control, but if you don't like it, you don't have to buy it. I've also been making comments in some other videos, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's nothing stopping anybody from actually going back and playing an old version of the game. A lot of people do that. I know there was a lot of veteran players around my area who didn't like Age of Sigmar, the first version. They won't like the newest version, and they kept playing the old version of Warhammer Fantasy because that's what they liked. I know some people who don't like 7th, they didn't like 8th, they don't like 9th right now. They loved 4th or 5th or 6th, and that's where they've stayed. They've gone back and played those old games. They have the rulebooks, they have the codices, they have the armies. They can just play with them, right? Yes, they don't get to use all the new stuff, but it's not for everybody. So they keep just playing the old version, which is perfectly fine, and I think a great way to do it, a great way to enjoy the hobby. Again, like I said, it's everyone's hobby, and it's everyone's hobby, right? So do the hobby, play the game the way you want to play it, express yourself for the hobby the way you want to do it. Unfortunately, some avenues for expression have been closed off now. Hopefully at some point, maybe they'll open it up again. Who knows? We'll see how well Warhammer Plus does. I'm still on the fence. I watched that new Old Bale Eye, the little 24-hour free animation there. It was good. Wasn't great. Wasn't super impressed. I was a little disappointed because if you're going to lead with this thing, lead with something really, really good that's going to blow people's minds. I mean, it was funny. It was good. If you haven't watched it, I won't spoil anything for you. I think we're almost out of time. Go watch it if you want. But it was good. It was funny. It was unique, but it didn't blow me away. And I think if you're going to put something out, it needs to blow people away. You need to really impress people, especially since you're going up against a wall on here. Well, for a certain part of the community. But I'll leave it there, guys. That was just my 2 cents. And hopefully I added a little bit more to understanding the situation. It's not a happy one. I'm not happy with it. I think it is a slap in the face. Will it stop me from buying stuff? Probably not. Will it stop me from playing? No. I'm going to enjoy the hobby in a positive manner for myself, the way I like to do it. And I hope you guys can find joy in it too still. But I will leave it there. Please, if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, leave comments below. Let's keep this discussion going. And if you haven't, please subscribe, like, share it with your friends. And as always, keep rolling those dice. I'll see you guys later. Bye.